The arena floor shook under Commander Zarathis as she landed after throwing her latest opponent across the ring. The Corvan warrior lay still against the energy barrier that kept spectators safe from the violence below. Blood ran from his nose, and his breathing came in short gasps. He would live, but he would not get up again today. Zarathis stood 8 feet tall, with 4 powerful arms and natural armor plating that covered most of her dark blue skin. Her people, the Thrakkery, had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill everything else. She was built for war and had never lost a fight in the 7 years since becoming champion of the Galactic fighting circuit. The crowd above made noise, but she barely heard them anymore. Beings from dozens of different worlds came to Station Nexus Prime hoping to see her fall. They always left disappointed. She had beaten warriors from every major species in the galaxy. Some had been stronger, and some had been faster, but none had been smart enough to find her weakness. The arena announcer spoke through the sound system in the common galactic language. His voice echoed off the metal walls and reached every seat in the massive stadium. He told the crowd that today's challenger had been changed at the last minute. The Corvan berserker who was supposed to fight had been injured in training. A replacement fighter would take his place. Zarathis walked to her corner, where her trainer waited with water and medical supplies. She never needed much medical attention after fights, but the rules required a trainer to be present. The old vegan male had been with her since her first professional bout. He was one of the few beings who understood how fighting worked at this level. She drank the water and watched the entrance tunnel where her new opponent would emerge. The crowd grew quiet as they waited to see who would face the undefeated champion. Betting terminals around the arena showed odds that heavily favored Zarathis, no matter who walked through that door. She had earned those odds through years of victories. The tunnel door opened, and a figure stepped into the bright arena lights. Zarathis blinked in surprise. The being who walked toward her looked nothing like the warrior she usually fought. He was much smaller than she had expected, and moved with a strange easy confidence that she had never seen before. Jake Miller stood about 6 feet tall with brown hair and green eyes. His skin was pale compared to most species, and he wore simple combat clothing that looked almost casual. He carried no weapons and wore no armor. The human looked around the arena like he was seeing it for the first time, and maybe he was. The crowd began to murmur and then to laugh. Some spectators called out questions about whether this was some kind of joke. Others demanded their money back from the betting terminals. A few beings near the front row pointed at Jake and made comments about how small and weak he looked. Felt something she had not experienced in years. Curiosity. She had heard of humans, but had never met one in person. Their species had only made contact with galactic civilization 3 years ago. Most reports described them as soft and weak compared to other intelligent species. Their homeworld Earth was supposed to be dangerous, but the humans themselves seemed unremarkable. Jake walked to the center of the arena, where the referee waited. The referee was a tall, thin being from a species known for their fairness and sharp eyesight. He explained the rules in simple terms that both fighters could understand. No weapons allowed. No killing unless by accident. Fight continues until one warrior cannot continue or surrenders. Zarathis approached the center and looked down at her opponent. Jake looked back up at her without fear or nervousness. His eyes were calm and alert. She had seen that look before in the most dangerous predators on her home world. It was the look of something that knew exactly what it was doing. The referee asked both fighters if they understood the rules. Zarathis nodded, and Jake said yes in clear galactic common. His voice was steady and carried no doubt about what was about to happen. The crowd noise grew louder as beings placed last-minute bets and called out advice to their favorite fighter. Jake rolled his shoulders and stretched his arms. His movements were smooth and controlled. Zarathis noticed that he was studying her without being obvious about it. His eyes tracked her arms and legs and the way she held herself. She realized he was already trying to figure out how she would fight. The referee backed away to the edge of the combat zone. He raised his hand, and the arena grew quiet. Thousands of beings leaned forward in their seats. Cameras focused on both fighters. Across the galaxy, people stopped what they were doing to watch the feed. Zarathus had been in this position hundreds of times. She knew exactly what would happen next. The bell would ring and her opponent would either rush at her hoping to land a lucky blow, or they would try to stay away and look for an opening. Either way, they would lose quickly, and the crowd would cheer for her victory. But something felt different this time. Jake stood relaxed with his hands loose at his sides. He was not tensed for attack or prepared for defense. He looked like someone waiting for something interesting to happen, rather than someone about to fight for his life. The referee dropped his hand and the bell rang. The fight began, and Zarathus discovered that everything she thought she knew about combat was about to change forever. The first exchange lasted 3 seconds, and changed everything Zarathus thought she knew about fighting. She swung her primary right arm in a hook that should have ended the match before it really started. Jake was not where her fist arrived. He had moved under her swing and was already behind her left side, before she could bring her other arms into play. Jake did not try to match her strength or reach her height. Instead, he moved like water, flowing around a rock. When she turned to face him, he was already moving again. His feet carried him in patterns she had never seen before. He stayed close enough to strike, but far enough away to avoid her powerful arms. Zarathus threw a combination that would have dropped any warrior she had faced before. Her forearms worked together in a sequence that created a wall of striking force. Jake slipped between her attacks like they were moving in slow motion. His hands reached out and touched pressure points on her arms that made her muscles lock up for half a second. The crowd noise changed from laughter to confused murmurs. This was not going the way anyone expected. Zarathus felt her first moment of doubt in 7 years. The human was doing things that should not work, but somehow did. His strikes hit nerve clusters that other species did not even know existed. Jake moved in close, and his elbow connected with a spot just below her ribs. The impact sent pain through her body in ways she had never experienced. Her natural armor should have protected her, but somehow his strike went around her defenses. She staggered back 2 steps and saw respect replace mockery in the faces watching from above. She launched herself forward using her superior size and weight to try to overwhelm him. Jake did not try to stop her charge or get out of the way completely. Instead, he guided her momentum past him and used her own force against her. Zarathus found herself off balance and heading toward the arena wall faster than she intended. She managed to stop herself before hitting the energy barrier, but when she turned around, Jake was waiting in the center of the ring. He had not pressed his advantage or tried to attack her from behind. He stood with his hands ready, but not threatening. His green eyes watched her with the patience of someone who had all the time in the world. Zarathus realized that Jake was learning her fighting style during the match. Every move she made gave him information about how she would react in the next exchange. His tactics changed constantly as he discovered what worked and what did not. She had never fought someone who could adapt so quickly. She tried a different approach and used her reach advantage to keep him at a distance. Her long arms let her strike without getting too close to his strange pressure point attacks. Jake responded by changing his footwork to close distance in ways that made her strikes miss by inches. He was inside her guard again before she knew how he got there. His hands worked like separate weapons, each with their own target and timing. Jake struck at her joints and nerve centers while avoiding her attempts to grab or hit him. Every contact point he chose seemed to know exactly how her body was built. No other species had ever figured out Akari anatomy so quickly. The arena medical scanners tracked both fighters and displayed their vital signs on screens around the stadium. Zarathus' heart rate was higher than it had been in any fight for 3 years. Jake's readings showed complete control with no signs of stress or fatigue. He was fighting at full intensity while staying completely calm. News feeds began broadcasting the match to other systems as word spread that something unusual was happening. Military observers who happened to be on the station started paying attention to the screens. A few sent urgent messages to their commanders asking for immediate analysis of human combat capabilities. Zarathis felt her respect for Jake growing with each exchange. He had earned her full attention and effort in a way that no opponent had managed since she became champion. She stopped holding back techniques that she normally saved for life or death situations. If the human wanted a real fight, she would give him one. Jake seemed to sense her change in intensity and responded by showing new abilities of his own. His movement patterns became more complex, and his strikes came from angles that challenged her ability to track them. He was no longer just defending and learning. Now he was actively trying to win. The crowd fell completely silent as both fighters moved at speeds that tested the limits of what the cameras could follow. Jake and Zarathis exchanged techniques that most beings had never seen before. The human showed fighting knowledge that seemed impossible for such a young species, while she demonstrated why the Thrakari were considered among the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. After 90 seconds of combat that felt like hours, both fighters stepped back and looked at each other with new understanding. Neither had managed to gain a clear advantage. Zarathis had hit the arena floor once but had gotten back up immediately. Jake had taken several glancing blows that would have hospitalized most beings, but kept fighting without slowing down. The referee called a brief pause to check both fighters for serious injuries. The medical scanners showed damage to both combatants, but nothing that would end the match. Zarathis looked across the ring at Jake and saw something in his eyes that she recognized. He was enjoying this as much as she was. For the first time since becoming champion, she had found an opponent who could match her skill and push her to improve. Jake Miller had proven that humans could compete at the highest level of galactic combat. More importantly, he had shown abilities that no other species possessed. The undefeated champion was no longer undefeated, but she was not disappointed. She was grateful. Within hours of the match ending, news of Jake Miller's performance had reached every major world in the galaxy. Combat footage spread through military networks faster than official reports could follow. Species that had never heard of humans suddenly wanted to know everything about their fighting abilities and tactical knowledge. Commander Zarathis found herself in a position she had never experienced before. For 7 years, reporters and combat analysts had asked her the same questions about her techniques and training methods. Now they wanted to know about the human who had matched her in single combat. She spent more time talking about Jake than about her own performance. The questions came from beings she had never met, representing organizations she had never heard of. Military academies wanted to study human combat methods. Weapons manufacturers asked about human equipment needs. Diplomatic corps wanted to know if humans posed a threat to galactic peace. Everyone seemed to think that one arena fight had revealed secrets about an entire species. Jake handled the attention differently than Zarathis expected. He answered questions honestly, but never claimed to represent all humans or speak for his people. When asked about human military capabilities, he pointed out that he was just one soldier from one unit, on one ship. The galaxy seemed disappointed that he would not make grand statements about human superiority. Captain Alex Turner arrived at Station Nexus Prime 3 days after the fight. Jake's commanding officer came to assess the situation and decide how to handle the unprecedented interest in his subordinate. He found reporters camped outside the human embassy and military observers requesting formal meetings with human representatives. Captain Turner met with Zarathis privately to understand what had happened in the arena. She described Jake's fighting style and tactical adaptations in detail. Turner listened carefully and asked questions that showed he understood combat better than most civilians. He seemed concerned about the implications of what she was telling him. Jake and Zarathis began training together in a private facility away from the cameras and crowds. She wanted to learn his techniques while he was curious about throkery, combat methods. Their practice sessions revealed that the arena fight had only shown a small sample of what both fighters could do when pushed to their limits. During training, Zarathus learned about human history and warfare. Jake explained how his people had been fighting each other for thousands of years, while developing increasingly sophisticated weapons and tactics. The concept shocked her, because most species achieved space travel long before developing extensive military knowledge. Human wars had involved entire populations and lasted for generations. They had fought in every possible environment, using every available weapon. Military theory and combat training were deeply embedded in human culture, in ways that other species found disturbing. Jake spoke about historical battles like they were recent events that still influenced current thinking. The training facility sensors recorded their sessions for later analysis. The data showed that humans possessed natural advantages in warfare that went beyond individual fighting ability. Jake demonstrated an intuitive understanding of terrain use, tactical timing, and strategic thinking that complemented his personal combat skills. Reports began arriving from human colony worlds about successful defenses against pirate raids and hostile wildlife encounters. Each incident showed humans adapting quickly to new threats and developing effective countermeasures. The pattern suggested that Jake's abilities were not unique, but representative of broader human capabilities. Ambassador Lisa Chang found herself fielding questions from dozens of species about human intentions and military policies. She had been sent to negotiate trade agreements and establish diplomatic relations. Instead, she was trying to convince other governments that humans were not planning to conquer the galaxy. The Hegemony Council called emergency sessions to discuss what they termed the human question. Some member species argued for immediate restrictions on human expansion and military development. Others pushed for alliance negotiations that would bring human tactical knowledge into existing defense structures. The debates grew heated as more information became available. Military intelligence services began compiling reports on human combat performance and strategic thinking. The analysis painted a picture of a species that had evolved under constant warfare, pressure, and developed fighting instincts that other races had lost during peaceful technological advancement. Some reports recommended caution, while others suggested immediate partnership. Jake continued his training sessions with Zarathus, but noticed that they were being watched more carefully than before. Camera drones hovered at the edges of their practice area. Military observers took detailed notes about everything they did. Government officials requested private demonstrations of specific techniques. Captain Turner received orders to return to Earth with a full report on the situation. His superiors wanted to understand how one soldier's performance in an arena had created galaxy-wide interest in human military capabilities. The implications for future human expansion and colonization efforts were significant enough to require high-level policy decisions. Zarathus realized that her simple desire to fight a challenging opponent had created consequences that neither she nor Jake had anticipated. The human had walked into her arena looking for a match, and instead had changed how the entire galaxy viewed his species. She felt responsible for putting him in a position that he had never asked for. Jake seemed less concerned about the attention than everyone around him. He continued training and answering questions with the same calm confidence he had shown in their first fight. When asked about the pressure of representing humanity in the eyes of other species, he pointed out that he had only volunteered to fight one match against one opponent. The galactic media began referring to Jake as the human who shook the undefeated champion. Zarathus found the description accurate but incomplete. Jake had done more than shake her confidence in the arena. He had shown her that there were still new things to learn about combat and opponents who could challenge her assumptions about warfare itself. Their partnership was changing both of them in ways that would have consequences far beyond personal improvement. The Hegemony Council chambers had never been so tense during a peacetime session. Representatives from 47 different species filled the circular assembly hall while emergency protocols kept the proceedings closed to outside observers. Ambassador Lisa Chang sat in the human delegation section, knowing that the decisions made here would determine her species' future in galactic society. Council Chairman Vexstar called the session to order, using formal procedures that had not been required for over a century. The ancient keeper spoke in measured tones that carried weight across species barriers. He explained that unprecedented concerns about a member species' military capabilities required immediate discussion and resolution. The Corvin representative spoke first, using aggressive language that made several other delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. He claimed that humans had deliberately concealed their true nature during first contact negotiations 3 years earlier. The arena incident proved that they possessed warfare capabilities that threatened established galactic peace. Ambassador Chang stood to respond, but was cut off by the Bagan delegate, who presented intelligence reports from multiple sources. The data showed human colony worlds successfully defending against threats that had overwhelmed other species settlements. Pattern analysis suggested that humans were naturally adapted for warfare in ways that other civilized races had never developed. The Alterian military advisor displayed tactical analysis of Jake Miller's arena performance on the chamber's main screen. Computer models showed that human fighting techniques could be adapted to space combat, ground warfare, and strategic planning with devastating effectiveness. Several delegates demanded to know why humans had not disclosed these capabilities. During contact protocols, Lisa Chang finally received permission to address the assembly. She explained that humans had answered all questions about their species honestly during first contact procedures. No one had asked about military history or combat capabilities, because such topics were not considered relevant to trade negotiations and diplomatic relations. The Thackeray representative surprised everyone by defending human actions and intentions. As Zarath's commanding officer, he had received detailed reports about Jake's behavior and attitude during the arena incident. The human had shown honor, restraint, and respect for his opponent, while demonstrating superior fighting skills. Chairman Vexstar called for testimony from Station Nexus Prime, where the original incident had occurred. Commander Zarathus appeared via holographic transmission to answer questions about her encounters with Jake Miller. Her responses painted a picture of a warrior who fought with skill, but never with malice or aggression beyond what the situation required. The session continued for hours, as delegates debated whether humans represented an opportunity or a threat to galactic stability. Some species saw potential for military partnerships that could strengthen common defense against external dangers. Others worried about what would happen if humans decided to use their abilities for conquest rather than protection. Meanwhile, on Station Nexus Prime, Jake and Zarathus continued their training sessions under increased security measures. Their practice area was now surrounded by force fields and monitored by sensors that recorded every movement and technique. Military observers from different species watched their sessions with obvious fascination and growing concern. Jake noticed that questions about human capabilities had become more specific and probing. Reporters asked about Earth's military history, human weapon development, and tactical doctrines used by their armed forces. He continued to answer honestly, but pointed out that he was a single soldier who could not speak for his entire species. Captain Turner received new orders to cooperate fully with galactic authorities while protecting sensitive information about human military capabilities. The balance was delicate because too much secrecy would increase suspicion, while too much revelation might create fear or hostile responses from other species. News reports began featuring expert analysis of human potential in various warfare scenarios. Military theorists published papers about how human tactical thinking might change established combat doctrines. Weapons manufacturers started developing equipment specifically designed for human physical and mental characteristics. The council debates reached a critical point when the Zephyrian delegate presented evidence of human involvement in conflicts on 3 different worlds. The incidents showed humans providing tactical advice to local forces fighting against criminal organizations and hostile governments. Each case demonstrated human ability to analyze complex situations and develop effective strategies. Ambassador Chang explained that the humans involved were private security consultants and military advisors operating under legitimate contracts. Their actions were not directed by Earth's government and represented individual choices rather than species policy. She emphasized that humans had never initiated aggression against any galactic civilization. The hegemony's military command presented their own analysis of human capabilities based on available data. Their conclusion was that humans possessed natural advantages in warfare, but showed no signs of aggressive intentions toward other species. They recommended monitoring rather than restriction, as long as human behavior remained peaceful. Jake's training sessions with Zarathus began attracting unofficial visitors from various species militaries. Officers claimed to be conducting routine inspections or diplomatic visits, but spent most of their time observing human combat techniques. Some requested private demonstrations of specific fighting methods they had heard about. The political pressure surrounding human capabilities reached a new level when intelligence reports revealed that several species had begun modifying their military training programs to incorporate human tactical concepts. The changes were being implemented without official approval or public discussion about their implications. Captain Turner found himself in the unusual position of conducting informal diplomacy while trying to protect his subordinate from excessive scrutiny. Jake had volunteered for one arena fight and now found himself at the center of galaxy-wide debates about species compatibility and military policy. Zarathus realized that their training partnership had become more than personal improvement for both fighters. Every technique they shared and every tactical discussion they had was being analyzed by observers who saw strategic implications beyond individual combat skills. Their private sessions had become unofficial diplomatic events. The council sessions continued with no clear resolution, as species representatives struggled to balance security concerns with diplomatic necessities. Chairman Vexter announced that formal hearings would be scheduled to gather additional information before making final policy decisions about human integration into galactic society. The emergency alert system activated across all major stations and colony worlds simultaneously as reports flooded in about unknown hostile forces attacking 3 different systems at once. The attacks were coordinated and brutal, with the aggressors showing no interest in negotiation or surrender demands. Civilian populations were being targeted along with military installations. The Hegemony Council emergency session convened within hours as military commanders struggled to understand what they were facing. The attackers called themselves the Devourers and used warfare tactics that confused traditional galactic defense forces. Their ships moved in patterns that standard doctrine could not counter effectively. Early battle reports painted a grim picture of overwhelming enemy superiority. In both technology and tactical knowledge, the Devourers seemed to anticipate every defensive move that galactic forces attempted. They struck at weak points that should not have been obvious to outsiders, and adapted quickly when defenders tried new approaches. Admiral Kate Morrison of the human fleet received urgent communications, requesting immediate assistance from species that had been debating whether humans were too dangerous just days earlier. The same delegates who had questioned human military capabilities were now asking for help against an enemy their own forces could not handle. Jake Miller volunteered to lead a mixed-species strike force before official requests reached human command authority. He understood that traditional galactic military doctrine was failing against the Devourers and believed that human tactical approaches might succeed where conventional methods had not. Zarathus immediately signed on as Jake's second in command, despite objections from her own military hierarchy. She had trained with him long enough to understand how human tactical thinking worked, and knew that her people's fighting abilities would complement his strategic planning. The strike force assembled at Station Nexus Prime included volunteers from 12 different species, along with human military advisors and tactical specialists. Jake spent their travel time teaching combined unit tactics that incorporated each species' natural advantages while compensating for their limitations. The first engagement at Kepler Station proved that Jake's approach was fundamentally different from anything the Devourers had encountered. Instead of trying to match their technological advantages, Jake used human concepts of asymmetric warfare and tactical misdirection to create opportunities that conventional thinking would have missed. Zarathus led assault teams that combined her people's natural fighting ability with human tactical coordination. The result was a fighting force that moved and struck like nothing the galaxy had seen before. They did not just fight harder than their enemies. They fought smarter and more adaptively. Jake's command style proved as unusual as his tactical methods. He made decisions based on intuition and experience rather than established doctrine. His ability to read battlefield conditions and adapt strategies in real time gave his forces advantages that computer modeling could not explain. The battle turned when Jake realized that the Devourers were using galactic military databases to predict defensive responses. Human tactical knowledge was not in those databases because humans had never shared their warfare methods with other species. The enemy could not anticipate strategies they had never encountered. Combined species units began using human-inspired tactics throughout the engagement. Thrakari warriors provided shock assault capability, while vegan technical specialists handled electronic warfare under human coordination. Each species contributed their strengths, while human tactical thinking tied everything together. The victory at Kepler Station became a turning point that changed galactic military thinking forever. Jake had proven that humans brought more than individual fighting skills to warfare. They possessed strategic and tactical knowledge that complemented other species' abilities to create something stronger than any individual capability. Zarathus finally understood what made humans unique in galactic society. They had developed their fighting abilities under constant pressure over thousands of years, while maintaining their essential humanity. Other species had either avoided warfare completely or had been consumed by it. Humans had found a balance that no one else had achieved. The Hegemony Council called emergency sessions to address the new reality that human military knowledge was essential for galactic defense. Species that had argued for restrictions on human expansion now pushed for immediate military cooperation agreements. The threat from the Devourers had changed everything. Jake returned to Station Nexus Prime as something more than just a successful fighter or tactical advisor. He had become a symbol of what humans could contribute to galactic civilization when their abilities were properly understood and applied. His arena fight with Zarathus had started a process that concluded with humanity earning its place as defenders of civilized space. Ambassador Lisa Chang found herself negotiating military partnership agreements instead of trade contracts. The species that had questioned human intentions now wanted access to human tactical knowledge and strategic thinking. The diplomatic situation had reversed completely within a matter of weeks. Captain Turner received orders to establish the first integrated human-alien military academy, where species throughout the galaxy could learn warfare techniques from humanity's unique perspective on survival and tactical adaptation. The facility would be located on Station Nexus Prime, where everything had started. Jake and Zarathus accepted joint command positions at the new academy. Their partnership had evolved from arena opponents to training partners to military commanders who understood each other's strengths completely. They would teach the next generation of galactic warriors how to defend civilization against threats like the Devourers. The Academy's first class included students from 26 different species, who came to learn human approaches to tactical thinking, strategic planning, and adaptive warfare. Jake taught them that fighting was not about being stronger or faster than enemies, but about being smarter and more flexible in applying available resources. Zarathis helped students understand that combining different species' abilities under human tactical coordination created fighting forces that were greater than the sum of their individual parts. The galaxy had discovered that diversity was a strategic advantage when properly organized and led. The human who had walked into her arena had indeed shaken the undefeated champion, but he had also shown her a path toward something greater than individual combat excellence. Together they were building a future where species worked together to protect everything they valued most.